Good afternoon, and thank you for tuning into Armor Animal Health's video series of Have You Heard? My name is Katie Halowinski, and I worked at Armor Animal Health as the marketing manager for the last 11 years. Before that, just a little bit about myself. I grew up around the corner from my grandparents' dairy farm, which you can see located above me there. It's located in a small town near Brillion, Wisconsin. And for those of you that aren't from Wisconsin, that's about northeast Wisconsin. Currently, I, like many of my coworkers, are working from home. So I just want to give a fair warning right now. You may hear a dog barking or a 3-month-old baby cry, but that's just the warning. It's what we'll have to deal with as we work from home and give you this live video. But my point is that we miss all of you, and we miss our hardworking customers. We appreciate your diligence in continuing to provide wholesome food for us each day. And since we're limited right now on our ability to get out on farm, we still wanted to help you remotely, which is why we developed this online weekly show where we can bring you relevant and educational information to help your operations bottom line. So you know where I am. I'm working from home in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin. Today it's a lovely 54 degrees, sunny out. I'm actually sitting in my sunroom, turned home office. But I want to know where you're watching from. So give me a shout out, list your town in the comment section below, and let me know what the weather is like where you are today. If it's anything like where I am with 54 degrees and sunshine, I'm sure many of you are working in the fields. So maybe you're watching from the cab of your tractor. So I'll see right here. Oh yes, some of us are calling in from Texas. That is great. Good to have you. It's great to see so many of you that are tuning in for our first episode. And we thank you for your time, but we also know that your time is very valuable. So we're gonna get right to it. Now, never in a million years did I think that we would be doing an educational video on how to strategically reduce milk production. But as you know, we are in some very unprecedented times. So today we have Dr. Megan Tiffany. She's one of the Armor Animal Health veterinarians, and she's joining us from her farm in Athens, Pennsylvania. So just so you know where that is, Athens is on the border between Pennsylvania and New York. And Dr. Megan, are you there? How are you doing today?
Hi, Katie. Thanks for having me. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. What's the weather like in Pennsylvania today?
Well, it sounds pretty similar to what you're experiencing in Wisconsin. It's about 54 and partly cloudy, spritzing some raindrops, but we're still trying to get some field work done. So that's exciting.
That's great. I know yesterday you had rain, so today sounds like a better day for field work.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
Well, before we get started, Megan, why don't you just introduce yourself and give your background and how long you've been with Armor?
Sure. So thanks for having me. Yeah, I've been with Armor for about 3 years now. I've been a vet for about 8 years, and I practice in New York and Pennsylvania, as well as working with the sales reps in the field out here. So I am the Northeast Regional vet, and I'm more than happy to help anybody in the Northeast.
Great. What about your background? Did you grow up on a farm?
Yeah, so I actually grew up on a dairy. We milked about 47 cows, so a small dairy here in Bradford County, Pennsylvania. And then when I was in vet school, my dad got out of milking cows, and we got into beef. So now we run a beef operation, cow-calf, as well as finishing our steers out, and we run about 50 head of mama cows, and then most of those are registered Angus. So kind of have the beef and dairy going on, but I love them both.
Yes, you, like many of our other vets, have not only their full-time job at Armor Animal Health, but they also have their own farms that they work on. So they definitely understand the industry and they understand the times that we're going through. So Dr. Megan, today you're going to be taking us through some of the strategies on how to utilize whole milk for dairy calf nutrition. And I just want to tell our viewers that we want this to be as interactive as possible. So while Dr. Megan is taking us through and talking about how to utilize whole milk, I want you to feel comfortable to just start commenting and asking questions throughout the entire presentation. Don't feel like you have to wait to the end to post a question. We don't want you to be shy at all. In fact, we are going to be giving out a prize package to the best questions. So you might be able to get this lovely Armor Animal Health hooded sweatshirt. So please do ask your questions. And with that, Dr. Megan, take it away.
Well, thanks, Katie. Thanks for having me on today. As you mentioned, I'm going to talk about how to utilize the oversupply of milk that our producers are facing right now. As you may know, many milk companies are asking producers to reduce their milk production by as much as 10 to 20%, depending on where you're located. I know the Northeast especially is dealing with a huge oversupply, being that we're mostly in the fluid milk market. So my topic today is going to touch on feeding this excess whole milk to calves. So I want to start by emphasizing, that you should please discuss this with your nutritionist and herd vet before implementing any changes. We're here as a great resource, but we want to emphasize that your herd vet is an absolutely vital part of your operation. So please don't leave them out. This may be the right decision for many of you, but for some, it simply may not be a good decision. So feeding whole milk is overall a great opportunity for the right situation. Many pathogens can be transmitted through milk of infected cows, causing disease transmission in calves.
So Megan, I'm just going to interrupt you right there. So a question that a farmer could be asking right now and thinking about is, which pathogens should they be watching out for, and which pathogens should they be worried about?
Yeah, that's a great question, Katie. The big ones that we worry about being transmitted from cow to calf through the milk include Mycoplasma, Staph aureus, and Johne's disease. There are others, but those tend to be the big three that we really worry about. In order to mitigate this disease transmission, you can take a couple of approaches. First would be to culture your bulk tank. So choose which group of cows you plan to use milk from and culture this group specifically for the three diseases I just talked about: Mycoplasma, Staph aureus, and Johne's. You want to be fairly strategic about which group to use, because once you have a clean group, you don't want to add cows unless they've been cultured. Secondly, don't feed unpasteurized waste milk. Waste milk is often from sick cows with unknown levels of antibiotics and high bacterial shedding. So the bacteria that cause the cow to be sick can actually transmit directly to the calf and make the calf sick as well.
Okay, well, I don't want to scare anyone, but is this risky? I mean, is this really a good option for the health of a calf?
Well, as I said before, it's not without risk, but instead weighing the risks and the benefits. So it comes down to a price point for many. And with the economic situation right now, the excess milk production makes it very favorable to do this very management decision. So there is a wide range in price associated with feeding milk replacer. Anywhere from $1.30 to $3.60 per day is a pretty common figure thrown out there, depending on what kind of an accelerated calf program you are on. A good way to look at it is by calculating price per pound of gain rather than just flat out price per day. So many producers target the 2 to 3 pounds of average daily gain per day. The next strategy I want to talk about is gradually transitioning calves onto milk. So if you have bags of milk replacer yet, it's probably a good idea to use that on the calves that are established, and start the newborns on the whole milk. That way you don't have to deal with, that kind of a gut transition that can be hard on calves. So calves can experience a nutritional diarrhea from making the switch from milk replacer to unpasteurized whole milk. It does take a little while for their gut bugs to adapt to this change. So you want to monitor manure consistency, appetite, and attitude to catch potential gut upsets quickly. But once adapted, you can slowly increase the feeding rate up to 20 to 25% of body weight. So a common feeding program that may be a little easier to wrap your mind around is many people will feed a gallon of milk 3 times a day.
Okay, Megan, thank you for that. I just want to interrupt you because we do have a question from Carly. She's stating that we feed whole milk to our calves all the time, but it is from our treated cows. We run it through the pasteurizer, but is there a benefit to feed clean milk to say?
So if you're feeding pasteurized milk, that would be an ideal situation. So when you're pasteurizing it, you're killing off all the potentially bad pathogens that I talked about in the beginning as being harmful in feeding whole raw milk. So in many situations, farmers are making this choice because they don't have access to a pasteurizer. Another way would be an acidification process, which also makes the milk more difficult for bacteria to reproduce in. So this specifically, feeding the whole raw milk is much more risky than pasteurized. So yeah, pasteurization is fantastic.
Great. Thank you for the question, Carly. That's a great question. And I want to remind everyone that if you do ask a question, remember that prize pack is on the table. So make sure that you ask some questions for Dr. Megan. Feel free to. I have a question for you, Dr. Megan. You talked about the transition. Is there a way to make adding milk transition easier?
Yes. So there are several options for different add packs that you can add to your milk depending on what your challenge is. So for example, you can add additional protein and energy with certain products, while others are more focused on enhancing your vitamin and mineral content, as well as coccidiostats like Decox, and even Clarifly if you want to add something to get ahead of fly control, with the warm weather approaching. So we actually, with the professional services team at Armour, have developed a simple product guide to compare some of the more common whole milk add packs. So this tech bulletin, if you will, compares the benefits and relative costs of our different options. There are many products on the market beyond what we've featured in the tech bulletin. More specifically, the probiotic market is huge, and the probiotic products would help make that transition from milk replacer even smoother yet.
And I know that the tech bulletin, it's probably hard to read for a lot of you that are watching this now, but we will get this to you. If you want to comment below in the section below that you'd like a copy of the tech bulletin, we can definitely get that to you via email or whatever. We can even mail it, whatever is easiest for you. So now all of this sounds really good, Megan, and I thank you for sharing this. I think I'm very optimistic that our viewers will have a better idea of what to expect when they switch over to feeding whole raw milk. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Hopefully you've gotten a better idea of the pros and cons and what to expect when making the switch. It can be a great way to utilize excess milk that you're either, dumping down the drain, or, maybe you're utilizing it in other ways. I hope so. But it's certainly something to consider. In my parting comments, I just want to be sure to to add that you need to feed whole fresh milk as fresh and warm as possible. So if you can divert the milk before it goes through the plate cooler, or even before it goes into the bulk tank, you just want to have a dedicated employee making that transport, as quick as possible to minimize, bacterial replication. As fresh milk sitting around gets pretty loaded with bacteria pretty quickly. So you want to use clean, sanitized collection buckets, tanks, or totes, and just make it as quick as possible. So I know this feels like a big topic to dig into, and I feel like I've only scratched the surface. I would just encourage you to reach out to get in contact with an Armor vet. Our vet team is an absolute wealth of knowledge and would love to help you in whatever manner you have, whether that be some consulting or some troubleshooting on your farm with other issues, or if you just want to talk further about how to utilize raw milk in your calf program, we would love to chat with you. So please get a hold of us.
Yes, Dr. Megan is definitely right. We have wonderful vets on staff that have expertise in a broad array of knowledge and experience. And to touch on that, Megan, we do have a flood of questions coming in, so I'm going to read some to you. Megan, I see that you joined and you thought you're late, but you're not. We're actually going to ask your question right now. Megan, you are asking, and I don't mean to confuse you with Dr. Megan. Megan Potter is asking, how do you recommend warming up cold, saleable whole milk to feed calves at the right temperature?
That's a really big challenge, because when you're warming it up, you're allowing those bacteria to start reproducing. So that's why it would be a better idea to feed it directly out of the line before the bacteria really have a chance to start replicating. So I don't have a great answer for you. I mean, some people will have a homemade system of some kind of an element from an old hot water heater or something like that, but I really recommend you just feed it as fresh as possible.
Thanks, Megan. Another question we have is from Brittany. She's wondering your thoughts on acidifying milk and what is the best way to do it.
So acidification is a great way to utilize whole milk. It's a lot cheaper than buying a pasteurizer. In the U.S., we have citric acid and I believe propionic acid. I could be wrong on that off the top of my head, that we utilize for acidification. Both of those require the milk to be at a slightly cooler temperature. I think they recommend about 70 degrees. Otherwise, it will curdle if you add the acid and it's too warm. The one thing to consider with the acidification process, it does change the taste of the milk a little bit. So a lot of people will say that they have trouble getting the intake in milk in bucket fed calves, but if you keep the calves on bottles, they tend to drink it without a problem. So I'm absolutely an advocate of acidified milk. That's a great way to use your fresh whole milk.
Awesome. Thanks for answering Brittany's question. And I think by how you answered that, I think we answered David's question as well. So we'll go over to Sarah. Sarah is asking, when already feeding whole milk, what about increasing the feeding amounts from 6 quarts to 9 quarts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned about, a lot of people will use a 1 gallon 3 times a day sort of technique. It's probably a better option to increase your feeding frequency rather than your feeding amount, just because a calf's stomach can only hold a certain amount of milk. The other thing to note is when you increase your frequency or just your overall volume of milk, your starter intake will also decrease. So while that is probably a little bit more difficult to calculate, dollars and cents, what, to predict what that value is going to be, you will decrease your feed cost as well by increasing your milk feeding.
Thank you, Megan. Another question David has is, what is the best product to acidify whole milk?
Really, the citric acid is going to be one of your safest options. So the user safety on mixing it is vitally important, that your employees know that it is a very strong acid and it can potentially, be dangerous when handling. So you want to make sure your employee compliance and your employee training is done really well. But I would look into citric acid.
Thank you, Megan. And I'm not seeing any other questions at the moment. So at this time, I just want to thank you, Dr. Megan, for taking the time to share this safe and economical way to use excess milk. Another question we have for all of our viewers is, what are you doing with your excess milk? So feel free to leave in the comments what you're doing. Also, this video is being recorded. So if you missed something and you want to go back and listen to it again, it will be posted to our Facebook page as well as our YouTube channel. If you're watching the recorded version and you still have a question, please ask it. We will make sure to be checking it constantly and trying to answer those questions as well. Did you have anything else, Megan, before you sign off?
I just want to thank you so much for hosting this, and I look forward to many more of our great new video series. So thank you, Katie. This has been a pleasure.
Thanks, Megan. And as Megan said, this is our first Facebook Live. So we hope that you enjoyed it and learned something new. If you did find it useful, show us some love, share it with your friends, comment in the sections below. And after this live, please look in the comments. We're going to post a survey there where you can click on it and let us know if there's topics that you would like to hear for future lives. Well, we're also asking if there's any better way that what we can do to serve you. So feel free to click on that survey. Again, ask questions. That sweatshirt is up for grabs. And we want to thank you for tuning in today. And by thanking you, we'd like to offer you a coupon. So today we are offering $10 off a $100 purchase. All you have to do is call any of our inside sales representatives and mention the code 688. And that coupon code is going to be good for 1 week until our next Facebook Live. So as many of you know, May is Beef Month, and next week on Have You Heard, we are going to be having Dr. Jacob Carlson and Guy Halverson live from Mandan, North Dakota. They're going to be discussing branding, vaccinating, and other summer turnout tips. So we'll see you next week, Thursday at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time for Have You Heard. And with that, cheers to you.